What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about if Gotham Knights will set up a sequel. Now, we've had this DLC and I guess even sequel talk before, but this is that run-up, right? Gotham Knights in just a week and a half at this point. This is the final prediction. This is the final thoughts for this game. So one more time, where will this game take us, and will there be more? Well, one of the things I was thinking about last night, and I'll be honest, I wasn't thinking it even for Gotham Knights, but I'll use the same logic, is I can't actually imagine that they spend this amount of time and this amount of effort on a game to then not do anything with it in the future. It's kind of an unfair cheat code of modern day gaming development, where these games cost so much money, they cost so much resources, so much time gets put into them, that oftentimes to just do a one-off for a game this big in the DC universe, like this, we can even look at this game specifically, right? And I think I was actually thinking about it for Hogwarts Legacy. When you think of all the money and time and in this world, do you really do that to then drop it entirely off a cliff right after this game comes out and say, no, we're going to pivot and do something else? Now, technically you could, and there are ways you could, and we've talked about maybe a Teen Titans game. That's one of my leading wants, let's say, for the second team, right? We know Warner Bros. Montreal has two teams, and they're working on a second game. That second game, in my opinion, is not Gotham Knights 2. It's something, whether it's a Superman game, whether it's, I think Teen Titans makes a lot of sense, but whatever it wants to be, there's that. I guess I'm mainly talking about this team, though, right? Because maybe there's a Teen Titans game, maybe there's something else from the second team, but this team that makes Gotham Knights, well, what's the plan after Gotham Knights is done from this group? And the answer, in my opinion, most likely is DLC first. You set it up for DLC. Now, well, when I say set it up, I don't mean one of these egregious leaving it on a cliffhanger, right? Where you need DLC to figure it out or find the ending. That is routinely not a thing you should do. It doesn't happen all that often, but when it does, it's never made people happy. Normally makes people furious. So the game needs to end. It needs to have an actual proper conclusion. And as I've said this before, maybe 1 to 2 DLC packs, and in those packs, they focus on villains. It's definitely possible that we could have other playable characters like a Cassandra Cain or Stephanie Brown or whatever, but I do think the villains I'm leaning more towards. So if you gave us, say, 2 villain packs, or even just one that has 2 villain stories to it, right? You did that, we play it. It doesn't need to advance the story, the overall plot. It could. I look at something like Horizon, the first game, Zero Dawn, had the Frozen Wilds DLC. You don't need to play that to understand the story of 2, but actually the main core story of Horizon does move forward because of that DLC, which is somewhat rare. Normally, you kind of stay away from that, but you can, make it work as long as it's not too important. So, it's possible Gotham Knights could do something where they end it, but they leave it open enough for more, and then there's more DLC, or there is DLC, let's say, in general, and that pushes it forward. I think that's a possibility, although maybe somewhat unlikely. But at the end of the day, once that DLC is over, and by the way, I do 1,000% think we're getting DLC. Unless this game completely, let's say, bombs, opening, it gets not even bad review scores. I don't think that's enough. If the game just doesn't sell whatsoever, then maybe they would cancel DLC, right? But I think kind of in the back of their minds, or even right now, they're already doing DLC. But the game's gone gold a while ago. The game's been done. The game was moved up in release date. I think they've been done for a while, and I think they've been doing DLC as well. But after that's done, I do think a sequel is going to happen. And again, really, part of it is that cheat where it's this is a slightly different situation, right? 9 years, they've had canceled game after canceled game. This game kind of worked in from a past. And in that way, you could argue it doesn't have to be a Gotham Knights 2. In fact, that's what I'm kind of talking about with the second game, or technically even the next game from this team, because it does happen sometimes where you use the core principles that you had in the first game, but you make something else for a second game. Ghost of Tsushima, another Sony exclusive. That game, if you play it, does feel like Infamous. Now, they threw a lot of stuff from Infamous out when they made Ghost of Tsushima, but I truly believe you can feel the DNA of Infamous in Ghost. So it could be something like that where they use this, and I guess that's what Teen Titans is kind of doing in my mind, in my head if I'm pitching it. It's going to use the idea of co-op. It's going to use the world. It'll use these quest lines. Like, it's going to use a lot of the fundamentals that this game relied on, but it's going to be something else, right? A different skin with Teen Titans. So you could do that. You could do that with the other game. But I do think with Gotham Knights, you'd want it to be a franchise, so you'd want more than one of them. You could branch it off, and that's, I guess, where Teen Titans comes from, but you could also branch it off where you do an individual game. I mean, could you do a Red Hood solo game? Sure. Of course, you're going to have people that say bring back Arkham, right? So I guess there's a counter argument where, well, if they were to do a Gotham Knights 2, could somebody ever go back to the Arkham franchise? And I do think there will be a Batman solo game at some point in our lifetimes. I do think they circle back to that. When I say them, I don't even necessarily mean Montreal. Could be Rocksteady, could be somebody else. I do think Batman, much like the movies, like, it's always going to be around. You always kind of circle back to it every so often, right? I guess not every couple years because it takes longer for games, but you circle back and you would do it. But in terms of like the Arkham games, and if you were to pivot and go back to that after this, I really don't think that's going to happen. And also because they've just been very violently against that idea, right? They don't want this to be an Arkham game. They've killed their Batman. Like, they want him dead. They don't want him around. And, you know what I mean? So, it's definitely something to bring up because the Arkham games are so popular and Batman is so popular. And you can imagine, and again, like, I do think there will be a Batman solo game that eventually happens, but I don't even know if it comes from these teams. So in my opinion, will it set up a sequel? Will there be a sequel? Yes, I do think and how they set it up, I think they just kind of leave some things open. I mean, we already have, kind of hints of that, and I've talked about that before with certain Easter eggs. I mean, and we've said it, Easter eggs in this game can be simply used to build out the lore of one game, or they could be kind of bread trails that lead for later. You could leave them here and say, like, hey, we know Batwoman's mom's in it, so, like, could she eventually come into it? Yeah, and you leave that, and then eventually you can kind of pick it up in future games. Maybe you swap out some of the knights. Maybe some of the knights stay, some of them go their own way. That's a possibility, right? Maybe at the end of the game, yet again, because it is a co-op game, because you have to go back into the game afterwards, like a indefinite open world kind of thing after, I don't think they'd split up by the end of the game. I'd imagine at the end of the game, the four knights are still all together, and they're, like, protecting God. They've gotten over their differences with each other or whatever, and they're all fine, and they're better than they ever were in terms of talent level, right? And that's where they kind of leave them off. And then for the next game, you introduce them with a bigger threat, or you introduce more members, or maybe some of them, again, break off in between games. But I do think, especially, and again, like, reviews and criticism online, like, it is important. I never want to discount people talking online because it's what I do, right? So I don't want to discount my own voice. But I do think if the game sells, and what that means, 5, 6, 7 million units should probably be enough, right? But if it sells, 5 to 10 million, let's say, I think a sequel is going to happen. It's got the DC brand. It's still got the Batman brand because it's his Knights. Like, it's still related to him in that way. And then I think it's just powerful enough to stand on its own 2 feet. And the first game would have, in this world, right? It would have done really well. They would say, hey, this game sold 9 million units. Of course we can do a sequel. Don't take 9 years to make the sequel, but you can make the sequel. So I do think it'll set up loosely. It'll leave the door open for a sequel, and then pending sales, or if the sales are good, I do think we will get a sequel to Gotham Knights. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure you guys are subscribed, bell icon turned on so you know when all these videos go up. If you want to follow or support me anywhere else, all my social media links are in the description below. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all on the next one.